As someone from another country, why do Americans have such a highly competitive culture and are so mad about getting college degrees? Note that I don't want to be condescending with this post, I am genuinely curious, but I am German myself, and whenever I browse Reddit I usually see posts about the job market this, the job market that. You have to always be pragmatic, always be on the move, always jump around between the most lucrative opportunities and build your resume in the meanwhile. A lot of discussions where a job is mentioned seem to revolve around, yeah, it's so dead end, I hate it, or, you gotta do X and work 80 hours a week to be successful, always be looking for something, etc. In comparison, and I remind you again, I am not saying we are superior in every way, just comparing, I can only tell you how it is here in Germany for most people. Most people here do apprenticeships when they get out of school. Only a handful, like 17%, of the population actually has a bachelor's or higher, and universities are very focused on proper learning, except if you look for it yourself, it isn't about social connections. It is just studying for the sake of studying for your passion on a professional level. And when you get a job you don't complain, oh I gotta rise, I gotta be the highest I can. You have a job, you get paid okay, not super high, not low, and that's it. Many of us here are absolutely okay with what you would call dead-end jobs. We don't have this competitive drive here usually, and I don't think it's any other way in other European countries. We work a job and are happy with our lives, without this drive or feeling of having to ascend at every point of our lives. So it seems quite bizarre to me that there seems to be this everlasting drive for more money, more fame, more work, combined with the incredible demand for college. The employer-employee loyalty is also quite strong here in most cases, you have very friendly working environments, and often people stay over half their lives in companies. As someone from a culture that's the exact opposite, and from someone who is absolutely fine with working the dead-end job I love, all of this seems so distant, like a whole other world. And I would really appreciate it if someone could explain to me the motivation and the culture behind it. Thanks for reading. I've spent a very small amount of time in Germany, both on my own and living with some friends. What I observed is that, in general, people are neither poor nor wealthy. That lines up with what you're saying with, you have a job, you get paid okay, not super high, not low, and that's it. The big difference between what I would describe as middle class, or comfortable, in Germany and that same quality of life in the USA is risk. In Germany, you are never at risk of going bankrupt and becoming homeless because you got sick. You won't be fired from your job because you got sick and had to miss work. You get time off from work to rest, vacation, and even get mental health care. None of these things are a given in the USA. The only way to decrease the risk for us is to get a better job, but even that is no guarantee. In most states, we can be fired for no reason and with no notice. So we always have to be working extra hard to prove to our employers that we are worthy and should get to keep our jobs. If we lose our jobs, we risk destitution and homelessness, not just for us, but for our families. Because employers in Germany can't fire an employee at will, that has resulted in longer-term relationships between employers and employees, which results in loyalty. And because people are generally less afraid due to decreased risk in Germany, they can afford to stick around. We don't have that. So you get a college degree so you can get a better job. You switch from job to job so you can get more money. You don't develop loyalty to a company because companies aren't loyal to you. The end goal is to amass enough wealth so that one can rest without worrying too much. But the worry never fully goes away, because unless you have tens of millions in the bank, all it takes is an illness that puts you out of work, and our health insurance is provided by our employers, so if you lose your job and your health insurance, you're screwed, and costs a lot to treat, like cancer, and you could lose it all. I had a friend who had twins a couple of years ago. Due to complications, she was in the hospital for a while and her bills were over $1 million. She had a job and insurance, but just imagine if she had been unemployed at the time. Stuff like that can be devastating. I have a great job with a high salary and I work for a British company that has different values than an American one. But even I can't shake that fear that US work culture instills. Even though I love my job and they seem to like me pretty well and it's probably quite secure, I'm still focused on paying off debt, at this point, really just our mortgage, to decrease our monthly expenses so that, if I lose my job, I can afford to take a big pay cut and we'll still be okay. That's the kind of thing that has to be on our minds a lot. What happens if? What will I do if? Where will I go if? In Germany, the government provides a lot of that security. You don't have to worry about these things. In the USA, we really only have ourselves. This was my take as well. Being a 35-year-old American with a relatively stable life, I am constantly worried about losing everything due to a medical emergency. There is very little safety net outside of your own family's independent wealth, that you feel the need to gain as much as possible in case of the inevitable collapse. A lot of us would have a better standard of living if we had free healthcare, not just because of the health stuff, but because it would allow us to feel more secure. Exactly this. I had one of those secure AF union jobs with tenure, and young gun management came in, wanted to restructure, worked with the lawyers to find loopholes in the union contract, and started downsizing. I know a guy who has been homeless for years now. I know a woman who fought the downsizing, won, was reinstated, and then immediately downsized again and won her case again. Instead of fighting, I went back to grad school, but I'm afraid that I will be starting from scratch and paying my dues in my middle age, just as I was doing in my 20s with food stamps, living with my parents and all that jazz. All of the ambitious young things that they hired during restructuring all jumped ship to bigger and better things. The institutional knowledge of the org is now Swiss cheese, and my department is a fraction of the size that it ever was, with more cuts on the way. It's a race to the bottom, and for all the ills that can come from unions that are too strong, unions that are too weak, and management that seeks to undermine employee rights are a total death knell for employee loyalty, morale, and organizational sustainability. Had I been more ambitious, I would have used my tenure to jump ship years ago, and I'd probably be in better shape right now, but I really loved that job and its mission. In my opinion, there are many factors and cultural influences in the States that cause this. There are beliefs many Americans hold, like, be all you can be, and everyone can be a millionaire if they work hard enough, that contribute to this, but I think the main culprit is the education system itself. The school system in America has indoctrinated people into believing that a degree is the only way to succeed. Blue-collar, manual work is looked down on. I don't know how plumbers are portrayed in Germany, but in the US they are usually seen in movies and TV as poor, fat, and smelly, with their butt cracks hanging out. Meanwhile, most plumbers I know make $70K a year and hardly get dirty at all. There has been a demonizing of blue-collar jobs, welding, electrical, carpentry, etc., and advocating of white-collar. This comes from media, family, and more importantly, the education system itself. Colleges need to sell the idea of $60K worth of debt for a degree, and they do this by teaching people you can't be anything without a degree. Now you have thousands of people believing the only way to succeed is with a degree, and that causes several problems. First, an overabundance of qualified candidates for mediocre jobs, hence the reason people on Reddit always complain there's no opportunities and employers want 10 years experience for starting positions. Second, a lack of candidates for other jobs. I am a welder by trade and have been making decent money. I might never be rich, but I'm quite comfortable, since a couple years out of college that I left before getting a degree BTW. In my experience, the majority of workers in most shipyards and construction sites were older people, with no influx of new workers to take over their positions. People do not want to do that kind of work for whatever reason. This is also where I see a large percent of immigrant workers, legal and otherwise, because they seem to be the only ones willing to get their hands dirty. In the shop I work at now, we have been trying to hire a new metal polisher. The 3 current polishers we have all make over $25 per hour, but we have not been able to get any qualified applicants, and by qualified I mean has their papers to work in the US. But I digress. TLDR, colleges indoctrinate people to believe they cannot succeed without a degree so they can sell degrees. To me it sounds like something that is done for purely capitalist reasons rather than for learning and maturing people. In Germany, learning and studying is something sacred that is done for its own sake. If I may say so, in the States it seems that college degrees are for 3 parties and not the student himself. First, for the college that will suck to it. Second, for the state that gains interest from loans, and third, for the employer, who knows you are shackled by debt and can't afford to lose the job. When you compare it to European countries, or Scandinavian ones, or even Canada, this seems super cynical. I think I would just learn a trade if I were in that position.